Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack the latest research, the big breakthroughs, basically get you up to speed fast. And today, wow, we're diving into something really remarkable. It's shaking up our whole understanding of human origins. For decades, the story seemed pretty clear, right? Humanity's cradle was Africa, exclusively Africa. But some new discoveries, actually from this year, 2024, are suggesting something else. That the roots of great apes, maybe even our own species, Homo sapiens, have these deep, crucial connections right here in Europe. And look, this is just about, tweaking the old theory a bit. It feels like a really fundamental reevaluation. We've always pictured that family tree rooted firmly in one place. But what if it's more like a sprawling vine with surprising branches reaching across continents, hinting that Europe played this foundational role we're only just starting to, well, get our heads around. So our mission today is to help you navigate this changing picture from the earliest ape ancestors all the way to us. We'll uncover some surprising facts, connections that make the human story even richer, more complex. Okay, let's unpack this.
Absolutely. And this deep dive, it's really about laying out the evidence. It's been mounting evidence suggesting Europe wasn't just, a stopover point for migrations, but potentially a really key region, deep, multifaceted, possibly even foundational for our whole human lineage. And that means the entire family tree, us, all our closest extinct relatives. We'll look at some groundbreaking fossils, yeah, but also some really unexpected genetic insights, and even touch on some, well, pretty radical alternative ideas like out of Eurasia, which could really flip what we thought we knew.
Okay, so let's start with the baseline, the traditional out of Africa model, OOA. This has been the bedrock for so long. The core idea. Homo sapiens emerges in Africa maybe 300,000 to 200,000 years ago. Then, much later, around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, a big wave leaves Africa. And this wave eventually replaces other ancient humans like Neanderthals across Eurasia. And genetics seemed to back this up, didn't it? Like mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosome studies, showing more diversity in Africa, suggesting older roots there.
Exactly, and that's precisely where things are shifting now. OOA is still incredibly important, don't get me wrong, especially for our species. But that strict replacement idea is really being recalibrated significantly because the genomic evidence now, it just clearly shows substantial interbreeding between Homo sapiens and these other ancient groups. So it paints more of a mosaic origin picture for us, not a pure single line. The focus is definitely shifting away from that simple one-way street story towards something much more tangled, complex intermingling.
Yeah, that braided stream metaphor makes so much more sense in that context. Instead of a neat tree, you've got this river system, right? Channels splitting, coming back together, swapping genetic material again and again. It just highlights this continuous gene flow, these complex movements back and forth. It feels much more dynamic.
It does. And that braided stream idea, it really helps us grasp these first big challenges to the Africa First idea, especially when we look way back at the earliest roots, the great apes. Think about it. Recent fossils like antediluvian Turkey found in Turkey, 8.7 million years old. Yeah. And even older, Baronius Manfred from Germany, 11.6 million years ago. These finds are adding serious weight to a theory that sounds pretty radical, that the common ancestors of African apes and humans might have actually evolved in Europe before migrating into Africa maybe 9 to 7 million years ago.
Really?
So that fundamentally questions if Africa was the sole starting point for the whole lineage, implying Europe had a primary role way before Homo sapiens.
It's just incredible to think Europe could have played that kind of role so early on. And it doesn't stop there, does it, with the ancient apes? Europe also seems to be this evolutionary crucible for Neanderthals. You have to talk about Sima de los Huesos, the pit of bones in Spain. I mean, this place is just staggering. 430,000 years old. It's the biggest, oldest collection of these Middle Pleistocene human remains anywhere. Over 7,000 fossils from more than 28 individuals. It's mind-blowing.
It really is. And it's absolutely vital for understanding Neanderthal evolution because these individuals, you could call them pre-Neanderthals, they already show clear Neanderthal traits. The brow ridges starting to inflate, the broad chests, and crucially, the nuclear DNA confirmed it. They're the oldest known Neanderthals.
So it proves Europe was a major center for their evolution.
Exactly. A deep Neanderthalization process happening right there, long before Homo sapiens shows up in Africa.
Okay, so you had this deep Neanderthal history in Europe.
And then that connects in a really fascinating way to discoveries back in Africa. Take Jebel Irhoud. In Morocco, originally people thought those fossils might be Neanderthals or something related, but then came this huge reevaluation in 2017, reclassified them as early Homo sapiens, and dated them to an incredible 300,000 years ago.
Making them the oldest Homo sapiens we know of.
The oldest we know, yes. But here's the twist, the really crucial bit. Even though they are Homo sapiens, they have these features. striking similarities to Neanderthals, things like the shape of the skull, the back of it.
So what does that mean? Shared ancestry.
It could be shared traits from a common ancestor like Homo heidelbergensis that lived across both continents, perhaps. Or, and this is intriguing, it could suggest really early gene flow, unrecognized mixing between North African Homo sapiens and proto-Neanderthals in Europe or the Near East. Way back then, it just challenges that idea of neat, separate lines evolving in total isolation. Suggests a more connected world even then.
And speaking of connections, the gene flow later on is undeniable now, right, between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals.
Oh, absolutely conclusive. The genetic proof is solid.
And it's not trivial. That 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA found in basically all non-African populations today.
It's a consistent feature, yes.
And we even have a better timeline now. From that fossil in Germany, Rhesus.
Right. That helps pin down a significant interbreeding event around 45,000 to 50,000 years ago.
So the upshot is, Homo sapiens isn't this purely African species that just replaced everyone else. We're a mixed species, shaped in part by populations that evolved for ages in Europe.
Precisely. That old replacement model, it's just too simple. It's an oversimplification.
But you said the genetic story gets even more layered.
It does.
Yeah.
Because when you dig deeper into those genetic contributions, it wasn't just a one-way street. It wasn't just us absorbing Neanderthal DNA. There's this kind of weird anomaly, evidence suggesting Homo sapiens Y chromosome genes actually got into the Neanderthal gene pool.
Really? Going the other way.
Yes, likely happening somewhere in the Middle East based on the evidence. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, this two-way gene flow, it shows a much more complex interaction, not simple replacement. It suggests they were in contact for long periods, maybe coexisting. And importantly, maybe some Homo sapiens genes were actually beneficial for Neanderthals.
Huh. Blurring the lines.
Exactly, blurring those lines between modern and archaic. And it highlights Europe and the Near East as that critical gateway, as being central places where our genetic identities were actively being forged through these interactions.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot already, showing Europe's unexpected role. Now, I think it's time we take that even deeper dive you mentioned.
Yeah.
Especially looking at this recent paper, Reevaluating the Cradle, which sounds like it presents even more, let's say, radical ideas, and really tries to solidify Europe's potential as a primary cradle.
That's right. Let's really dig into that now. Building on what we've said, those deep European hominin roots, they fundamentally challenge the Africa First idea for the ultimate cradle. Those ape fossils we mentioned, Antediluvius, Baronius, finding them in Europe, it isn't just about our species. It potentially places the very root of the entire hominin lineage, our whole family branch, after splitting from other apes in Europe.
The whole thing.
Potentially. If the common ancestor of African apes and humans originated there, well, then the very foundation of our family tree has a European root. That implies significant evolution, diversification happening in Europe before any dispersals into Africa. It flips the script.
And going back to Sima de los Huesos in Spain, that 430,000-year-old site, you framed it as a center for in situ evolution happening right there.
Yeah.
And the sheer amount of fossils, 80% of the global record for that period.
It points to a robust, established population, not just a few stragglers. They were thriving there.
But there was that genetic puzzle, wasn't there? The mitochondrial DNA initially looked more like Denisovans from Asia, even though the bones looked Neanderthal. How does that fit?
That's such a great point to bring up again. Because that paradox, it isn't really a contradiction when you think about it now. It's actually powerful evidence for these complex early population dynamics. The gene flow, it strongly supports that braided stream idea. It shows that even the genetic identity of a group could be a mosaic, different bits from different places, even way back then.
So the story was messy right from the start.
Very messy, interconnected. Which brings us back to Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, those 300,000-year-old Homo sapiens with the Neanderthal-like features. The two interpretations still stand. Shared ancestry or really early gene flow, before 300,000 years ago. Either way, it implies this much more interconnected world during the Middle Pleistocene, challenging that strict isolation model again.
Okay, and the later genetic mixing, the 1-4% Neanderthal DNA, you emphasize it wasn't just incidental.
Not at all. That event around 45,000, 50,000 years ago, seen clearly in the Rhesus individual from Germany, it represents substantial genetic assimilation. We incorporated genes from populations that had been evolving in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. And likely, some of those genes contributed to Homo sapiens' success, adapting to new environments outside Africa.
And that bidirectional flow you mentioned with Homo sapiens Y chromosomes in Neanderthal.
Yes. It underlines that complex interaction, not just replacement, but sustained contact, maybe coexistence, mutual genetic influence. Europe and the Near East were the crucible for this.
Which leads us, I suppose, to the most radical idea in that reevaluating the cradle perspective, the out-of-Eurasia hypothesis.
Whoa.
Yes.
Exactly. This isn't just adjusting out of Africa. It's a direct challenge to its exclusivity. It proposes that Homo sapiens, that's us, modern humans, might have actually originated in Eurasia and then dispersed from Eurasia to Africa.
Okay, that's a big shift. What's the support for that?
Molecularly. Well, proponents point to the genetic structure of African populations. They describe them as paraphyletic, based on mitochondrial DNA analyses, which, put simply, means their genetic tree branches out in a way that doesn't quite fit a single exclusive African origin group as neatly as we thought. And that greater genetic diversity in Africa, OEH reinterprets it. They suggest it might be the result of multiple consecutive dispersals from Eurasia into Africa, with the Eurasian populations that left experiencing bottlenecks, which reduce their diversity.
Okay. And what about fossils? Does OEH have fossil evidence?
It points to some specific finds. For example, early Homo sapiens fossils in China, Dali, Janisha, places like that. Some dating suggests they could be around 250,000 to 270,000 years old.
Which is significantly earlier than that main out-of-Africa wave everyone talks about.
Exactly. And then there's Apodema Cave in Greece, a fossil called Apodema 1, clearly early Homo sapiens, dated to over 210,000 years.
The earliest Homo sapiens in Europe, by far.
By far. Now, this raises a key interpretation question. The standard OOA view often sees Apodema 1 as maybe a failed dispersal, an early group that went out but died out. But the OOEH framework, it sees Apodema 1 as more evidence of an early established Homo sapiens presence within Eurasia itself, perhaps part of a lineage that later dispersed into Africa.
So putting it all together, the early apes in Europe, Apodema 1, these Chinese fossils, the OOEH interpretation.
What's fascinating is how this all potentially links up. You have the possibility of the earliest hominin diversification happening in Europe with Antediluvius and Baronius. And then you have this evidence, like Apodema 1 and the OEH arguments, suggesting a very early Homo sapiens presence there, too. Taken together, it builds a case, a radical one, sure, but a case that Europe itself might be a crucial cradle, maybe even primary, for key stages of both our earliest ancestry and the later emergence of Homo sapiens. It really questions OOA's exclusivity.
So, stepping back, what does this all mean for how we should think about human origins now? That old standard out-of-Africa model, especially the strict replacement version, it just doesn't seem to cover everything anymore.
It doesn't. The picture emerging now, it's built on all this accumulating evidence. Ancient apes, early Homo sapiens, fossils outside Africa, that pervasive gene flow, it forces a profound reevaluation. Europe's role looks much bigger. Not just a passive landmass that got colonized, but a dynamic, active, maybe foundational player in the human story over millions of years.
So we really need to embrace that multi-regional contribution idea and the braided stream.
I think so. It's a more integrated view. It absolutely acknowledges Africa's pivotal central role, of course, but it also firmly recognizes that Europe made significant, active, lasting contributions to who we are today, to our species' resilience and diversity.
It really does paint a picture of human evolution as far more intricate, more interconnected than we used to think, like a truly global tapestry woven across continents. Our family album just got a whole lot more complex and, frankly, more interesting.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating, I think, is watching the science happen. Every new discovery, every time we reanalyze old bones with new tech or look again at ancient DNA, it just adds more layers. It reminds you that knowledge here isn't some fixed destination. It's definitely a journey. It's a living field.
It really is. So here's a final thought to leave you with. Given this huge shift in understanding our own complex, multi-continental origins, what other big scientific beliefs, things we've held onto for a long time, might just be waiting for their own profound reevaluation? Makes you wonder how much more is out there, still waiting to be uncovered, doesn't it?